Well, good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to, welcome you to the second session, part 2 of the emerging techniques in MRA, 4D flow, and AI. My name is Oliver Wieben from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I'm moderating the session together with Professor Said Moussaoui from the local University of Nantes, the Central Nantes. I want to point out that the program had a clerical error, and you might have seen an extra page in the program. That's the one we're going off. I marked the difference in a yellow arrow there on the left. There is a 7th talk in the first session at 12:20 by Martin Fröhling, so everything else is shifted by 10 minutes in comparison to the book. So there will be a total of 10 presentations, and I kind of was asked to give a little overview of the field of emerging techniques. And since we had already a nice presentation, introduction this morning about MRA as an overview, I thought I'd focus on the 4D flow and the AI aspects of that. I think it's worth noting that in this session there will be, of the 10 talks, 7 of them will be on 4D flow imaging, 3 on machine learning, and then you saw a little bit more of a breakdown there. So, I thought I'd give a brief overview of different components that are essential for conducting 4D flow imaging, and a lot of that also applies to MRA. So kind of going in a workflow where we start with data acquisition, reconstruction, data corrections, post-processing, and visualization in data records. And I want to comment on each one of those, kind of where the field is and where some of the advancements are happening. So data acquisition has seen pretty dramatic advances over the last 10, 20 years. That's true for hardware, for gradients, for coils, also for our methodology. We've seen the introduction of parallel imaging, we've seen compressed sensing, so really new concepts of acquiring and reconstructing data in synchrony. I think I haven't seen dramatic methodology advances in that in the last few years or what I'm seeing so far in the meeting. It's more about fine-tuning those techniques, I would say. Where I'm seeing some advances being made is dealing with motion. There are a couple of aspects. There's more and more self-gating, both for respiratory and for cardiac gating, improving scan efficiency. So instead of throwing data away from motion states that are not applicable, trying to integrate them into better reconstruction. There's continued work on 5D imaging, not ignoring the respiratory cycle, but using it as another form of information. There's also a trend with some of the advances in hardware and compressed sensing to do real-time imaging that's limited to 2D. I don't think I've seen anything in the program here, but certainly happening in the field. Data acquisition and reconstruction goes a little bit together. We've seen also large advances in the methodology, like compressed sensing that's synced to the acquisition. Also a lot of advances in hardware. Our machines, reconstruction engines are much faster these days. There's much more powerful hardware accessible to us researchers on the magnet, not only for offline reconstruction. It's still too slow for some of these very high-end iterative reconstructions, though. Data corrections, a little pessimistic of you. I don't think there's so much happening, unfortunately. There is one presentation coming in this session here about some background phase correction. I think that's an area that's a little underserved, where more things could be doing, because we're still facing, especially in 4D flow, some of these issues that came up in questions previously: background phase correction, velocity aliasing, in low velocity regions along the vessel wall or so that deserve our attention. And then I lumped together the post-processing and visualization here. There has also been a lot of activity, both in commercial tools and research. So we're at a point where the vendors really have caught up, and you see that in the amount of presentations on 4D flow imaging and the people that do 4D flow. It's not only the high-end research centers anymore, it's also institutions that are much more focused on clinical throughput or so, because they have now data acquisition tools from the vendors, and there are post-processing tools that are approved, available. In the research arena, you see a lot of these hemodynamic parameters being investigated, being tried to be improved, being tried to be validated. So certainly an area of extended activity and methodology introduction. You will see a couple of those in the presentations to follow. Here's my slide on the role of artificial intelligence in MRA. I kind of made my first statement saying MRA or MRA flow is kind of catching up. I think that is a distinct difference to the advances we've seen in accelerating acquisitions, where MRA was a real driver in the field. There was a need for conscious bolus chasing, for cardiac cine imaging and things like that. So I think we were usually one of the first applications to see those introduced into the field, and we were a driver in the field. I don't think that's really true in AI. In AI, we're kind of seeing what other people develop that are more in the high-end math area and trying to apply it now a little behind, a little lag into the world of angiography and flow. So we'll see the most activities in segmentation. I call that a low-hanging fruit. That's pretty established in the field. It's also a true problem, especially in flow imaging. If you do time result segmentation of 3D volumes, that's a lot of man hours. I had some discussion with a graduate student yesterday about that topic. It's very enticing for students to tackle this problem and have a little more time to go to the movies or do other things. So I think by far that's the most activity that I'm seeing. There is also some early work in working on data corrections. There will be a presentation, and we already saw one, on fusion of CFD and 4D flow under the help of machine learning, acceleration by going to 3-point encoding we saw. I've seen some work on velocity aliasing corrections. And then in the reconstruction world, there are a couple of talks, not in this session here, but later in the meeting on learning, deep learning, or deep transfer learning, reconstruction, cross-domain deep learning, so improving reconstruction results with machine learning. And with that, I'm kind of done with my overview of the field. I want to introduce our first speaker. That will be Michael Scott from the Northwestern University in Chicago. The title of his presentation is Deep Learning for Fully Automated Pre-Processing and 3D Segmentation of Aortic 4D Flow MRI.